Hello, everyone. Welcome back for some more Let's Read Fate's Strange Fake. We're moving on with some more of Volume 3 as we head into the next interlude, The Passion of the Nameless Soldier. Now, you might notice that my eyes are currently in their kind of shut happy mode. The VTuber answer is it's allergy season, so I'm kind of squinty right now. The actual answer is, for some reason, there's a lot of glare on my glasses, and they make my eyes look closed and dart around and stuff. It's very strange. So I'm until the polarizing filter comes in, I will look like Brock from Pokemon. So, with that said, let us continue our reading of Fate Strange Fate. Interlude: The Passion of the Nameless Soldier. The other mages should be done summoning their heroic spirits before long. Seeing the sky begin to glow light in the east, Sigma drew in a deep breath and shut the windows of the mansion. Then he set foot in the basement, in someone else's workshop. Its barriers had already been dispelled. There was nothing to prevent Sigma's ritual. Can it really summon one? Sigma wondered as he descended. What is a heroic spirit anyway? What causes them to be chosen by the throne? He was just a mercenary who could use magecraft. After the government he had served had collapsed, its destroyers had picked him up. That was the extent of their relationship. It was not as though he had any special power, so why had he been singled out? As he pondered such things, Sigma silently went on preparing the ritual. Taking revenge on the government had never even crossed his mind. He had received basic instruction from various mages ever since he was very young. It had been judged that he excelled in the use of familiars, and training in that field of magic had been beaten into him, along with the use of weapons and other essential skills. He had spent his remaining time being instructed in how capable and absolute the government was. The moment that government had been easily replaced, however, he had realized that all of that was a lie. He believed in nothing. Even his own ability seemed unreliable and uncertain after seeing his employer's magecraft and the training of Faldius's unit. That was precisely why he wondered. Wondered if it was really all right for him, who had no faith, to participate in a battle for a possession of something called the Holy Grail. Sigma understood the object of the Holy Grail war, a thing capable of granting any wish, and a struggle for possession of the Holy Grail, which was the basis of that system. He was, nevertheless, unable to fully comprehend the very concept of that wish granter. Sigma's concept of a wish was extremely weak to begin with. When his employer had asked if he had a wish for the Grail, he had been at a loss to answer. It was not as if he was without desire. He had to say he desired peaceful sleep and food, but did he want them enough to entrust his future to the Grail, an external device? And even if that Grail did gush forth food forever, he would probably ask what was in it for the Grail. If it was a supply without a need for compensation, then it was something Sigma could not understand. Nothing could be more uncanny. He kept his doubts in his head, however. He made no attempt to follow up on them. The emotionally deficient young man continued to dispassionately perform his work, all for a sound sleep and his daily bread. In the environment he had been raised in, those had been the hardest things to come by. For the lightning wind, a wall. The gates of the four directions close. The young man, who had never believed in gods or miracles, or even his own strength, chanted in an effort to accomplish the summoning of a heroic spirit, a miracle equal to an act of God. He did so without emotion or desire, just mechanically circulating magical energy through his own body at the sight of the ritual. Emerged from the ring of a restraint, O guardian of the scales. He had not intended to put any special force into it, but as he reached the end of the incantation, Magically, energy was suddenly drawn from his body, and he instinctively raised his voice. Still, that was proof that magical energy had definitely flowed into the heart of the ritual. Even as he saw light begin to well up around him, Sigma was unmoved. All he felt was the hardship of handling the currents of magical energy. As the young man observed the swirling light, he reconfirmed his position with extreme composure. In this Holy Grail war, he was no more than a pawn that his employer had used to make the numbers add up. The fact that he had not been given a catalyst was proof of that. You know, I was actually planning to prepare all sorts of things for you, too. Blackbeard's treasure, that Paracelsus guy's flask, the hero Spartacus's manacles. What the frick is a manacle? Manacle? What's a manacle? I'm Googling this. What's a manacle? Metal chain, metal band, chain, or shackle for restraining someone. Okay. Kinky stuff. I get that. F11. Thank you. But then I had a little idea. I wondered what would show up if we let the city choose the heroic spear with no catalyst at all. I wonder what could possibly be drawn by this chaos. She did not know what would happen. Oh, wait, she? Oh, this is, no. Oh, this. Okay, I thought this was him saying he was going to prepare it, but no. Okay, this is employer. That was said by Francesca. Okay. Anyways, I'm not going to reread that. With an ecstatic smile on her face, his employer went on narrating the folly of willingly embracing such an uncertain element in a bright, clear voice. It's set up so Ruler won't come, but there's always a chance, right? Still, even without a catalyst, it'd probably just end up being a hero with a similar nature to the summoner. That's why you're perfect. You're nothing. You've got no wish for the world and no desire to leave your mark on it. You're basically Soldier A. Nothing heroic about you, so you can be a blank slate. If the fake Grail really just chooses... Okay, I think that's her. If the fake Grail really just chooses of its own will, what do you think will show up? Well, if nothing does, I wouldn't mind you just fleeing the city. So he was essentially a pawn to be sacrificed in order to satisfy his employer's curiosity. Even if a completely useless heroic spirit appeared, it would not matter. That does happen. What should I do? It would at least be someone to talk to. But he had nothing in particular to discuss, not even with a hero who had once won renown. Sigma occupied himself with such cold thoughts as he waited for the torrents of light and magical energy to settle. He was, in fact, no more than a pawn in this Holy Grail war. He had no one's attention. He existed only as the identifier, Sigma, which is a sideways M. Bet you someone reading this would be like sideways M, not Sigma. I know, Mangman X is giving me the knowledge. That's Sigma. Not even a name. Even his employer, Francesca, was aware of him only to the extent of thinking, I hope he brings in some fun, uncertain element. And he's my favorite pawn, so it'd be a good deal for me if he survived. In this fake Holy Grail war, the youth called Sigma was merely Soldier A, not even a mage, right until the instant his summoning ended. Snowfield, the Great Forest. I forgot about Enkidu in this. Enkidu, who possessed the highest class of the sense-presence skill, sensed a certain abnormality. He did not, however, think it might be due to the summoning of a heroic spirit. He narrowed his eyes slightly, much like I'm doing, and cast them apologetically down at the ground. I wonder if I've angered them a little. The only one to hear the heroic spirit's words was the silver wolf crouched beside him. Without anyone to understand them, Enkidu's words were absorbed into the dense foliage. The wetland basement. After the light, there was nothing before the ritual altar. Slowly surveying his surroundings, Sigma noticed a lone figure seated in a corner of a room. It was an aging man on an old chair. a cane in his hand. He had gray hair. A large vertical scar ran from his face to below his collar. Judging by his features, he was old enough to be called elderly, but judging by the width of his strong shoulders, among other details, it was possible to take him for an active-duty Marine. His most distinctive feature was the smooth, white artificial leg attached to one of his knees. Who is this? Sigma warily, wordlessly scrutinized the old man. It was true the man's presence was intimidating. He had a feeling it was slightly different from a hero's. His clothes were more recent than Sigma had imagined. At the very least, he did not look like the kind of ancient person who would appear in an illustrated tale of myth or of the Middle Ages. As Sigma racked his brains for something to say, the old man broke the silence himself. "You're a master in the Holy Grail War? You look like you've got no ambition. Who are you?" "Me? You can call me the Captain, but that won't mean anything for much longer." "What?" That was me, not him. But then he goes, "Huh?" Sigma mentally scratched his head. Mentally. Didn't do it in real, though. He mentally scratched his head at the man's roundabout way of talking. What does he mean? It won't mean anything. Anyway, formally establishing a contract should come first. Sigma decided to question the man after he had made sure of his identity, and answer the heroic spirit's first question in the meanwhile. "I am the master who performed the ritual that summoned you." The old man shook his head, his lips curling in a wicked grin. "Sounds like you've got the wrong idea, boy." Who is this? Wait. That's not... It's not Jun Zhao, is it? No. Okay. It was not the old man who answered the bewildered Sigma. Us? Us? Oh, whoa, we got another multiple-person servant? You didn't summon us. Wait, oh, the voice came from behind Sigma's back as he spun around to face it. As he did so, he drew his pistol from his holster and took aim. "Who's there?" As he asked, he realized that the figure behind him belonged to a strangely dressed boy. Wait, he was fitting with what looked like mechanical wings. Do we have Icarus? Oh wait, Icarus and Daedalus maybe? Wait. He was fitting with what looked like mechanical wings on his back and shoulders. It became eerily skeletal, however, and bits of wax and white feather had intertwined with them in places. If Sigma had to say, this figure was dressed more like a person from the age of ancient myths. Oh, this is absolutely... Icarus and Daedalus. Are they Rider? That'd be cool. Sigma wondered if the boy was the heroic spirit and the old man a mage who had infiltrated the mansion. When he looked at the old man, where the old man had been, however, he had already vanished from sight, leaving only an empty chair. "I'm merely, to put into your terms, an escaped prisoner," the boy said with a wry smile, ignoring Sigma's confusion. "What do you mean?" Sigma turned in response to the voice, but the one who had uttered it was no longer anywhere to be seen. Instead, yet another man's voice came from another direction. "We are not the heroic spirit you summoned. We are merely projected around you as its shadows." In front of the door, was a boy who looked to be in his early teens, clad in white garment. A tranquil-looking snake was coiled around the staff he carried, facing towards Sigma and flicking its tongue in and out. Hermes? A child? Or a child? Oh, sorry about that. It's an effect of using my own body in a clinical study using Medusa's blood? Wait, what? Well, it's nothing to worry about. I'm a shadow. I'll be gone soon. What the frick are you? The smiling boy's body thinned like mist, then vanished into thin air. What? What's going on? You sure drew the short straw, bro. You can't get away now. Although if you'd been a cute girl, I'd have materialized and made a go of it as a heroic spirit. What? Are we? What? Yet another voice. We are not heroic spirits, nothing of the kind. We cannot use noble phantasms, and we not a chopstick to our names, much less a blade. And another. What is this? Your only faults were your own luck and the people you know. Thanks to them, you've gone and summoned yourself unavoidable hardship. Different voices were appearing and disappearing in the underground chamber, overlapping each other and tormenting Sigma's mind with words he did not understand. Still, we have high hopes for you, you know? Hopes that you'll make it through and become Lancer? Wait, what? Wait, what? Is he becoming a demi-servant or something? He had heard that those who bore command seals and became masters were able to see a heroic spirit status. These things seemed like heroic spirits, but he could read no information from them. Still, even though he had not even made a contract, he definitely sensed a passive magical energy linking him to something. Still, it doesn't seem like it's sucking up my magical energy. It was a situation in which an ordinary person might very well scream, but Sigma, whose emotions had always been lacking, merely expressed a slight bewilderment. What do you mean I'll become Lancer? He asked the appearing and disappearing crowd of self-proclaimed spirits. For that, what in the world are you? I'm not even certain of the class of heroic spirit that's appeared. Thereupon, the old man who called himself the captain reappeared on his chair. The wrinkles on his stern brow grew even deeper as he answered. I see, it's not quite the right way to put it, but our role is to be always looking down from on high. So I suppose you should call us Watcher. What? There's a new class called Watcher? What the frick are we doing? Is it like servants who can't become servants are watching and they hope to take over his body to... I don't know. Okay. The Canon of the Demigods. Chapter 7. Okay. We're going in. All right, Chapter 7, Day 1, Afternoon 1, The Canon of the Demigods. In a dream. Mr. Sun's all nice and warm. Don't you think so, Mr. Black? The snowfield of Tsubaki's dream world. Kuraoka Tsubaki sounded innocent as she sat on the lawn of a garden where animals gabbled. It's a word I never use. The fantastic entity called Mr. Black, Pale Rider, however, was huddled under the shadow of the trees. Oh, do you not like this Mr. Sun, Mr. Black? As if to answer Tsubaki's question, Rider gave a sudden shiver. Just a little, she had a feeling the black mass was saying, based on its behavior. Could just be her imagination, but Tsubaki called out to Rider anyway. If you don't feel good, why not go inside? Rider, alias Mr. Black, had not spoken to Tsubaki since their first meeting. Since taking numerous animals into her dream, however, it gradually begun to express itself through its behavior, although only at a level it was possible to tell if it was in a good or bad mood like an animal. As Tsubaki headed inside, she suddenly looked at the silent residential district and murmured, I wonder if everyone left because they don't like this city. Tsubaki's expression clouded over. Mr. Black, now roughly the same size as her, leaned in close to her and rubbed her head, almost as if to ask, is anything the matter? Tsubaki smiled at it and shook her head. Thank you, Mr. Black. I'm fine. Then, looking around at the countless animals frolicking in the garden, she continued, I mean, now there are so many animals here. Not like before. Now that it's like this, Mom and Dad and everybody will stay in this city, won't they? Ryder heard those words and judged that they constituted her wish. Ryder was currently an exceedingly incomplete wish granter that took orders from its master, Tsubaki. Ryder began to wriggle, ready to use its powers to make the situation she wished for reality. At present, however, Ryder was not capable of complex inferences. And... oh my god. Okay, so like... I kind of love this whole thing, because it really reminds me like Pokemon the Movie 3. Because just that idea of a little girl who makes an innocent wish on something too powerful and, like, it's not good. The real world, the outskirts of Snowfield. The long road ran through the wilderness, and several cars ran along the road. Several mages were riding in one of them. They were not very well known, even in the clock tower. They were, however, one of the parties that had caught wind of the rumors and visited Snowfield with an eye to making a name for themselves. "We just passed the city limits." In the words of the young mage who was driving, elicited groans from the middle-aged mage in the back seat. "Uli, wet of ish, wait. Uli, wet of ish, shippy wiki. What the frick?" They could not tell what he was saying, but they could tell he was terrified. He had attempted to negotiate with a heroic spirit, apparently assassin, and ended with a dagger through the tongue. Oh, that'd be why. As healing magecraft was not his strong suit, he went on wailing at the driver, his apprentice, with his tongue wrapped in amulets. "I understand, Master. We gave up the moment we saw the crater in the desert, so we're with you in wanting to run. The car in front of us is probably full of mages, too. There's a familiar circling over it, and..." Then, the driver noticed a change. Starting at about the point they had left the city limits, there were a number of cars parked on either side of the road. The car that had been running way ahead of them hurriedly pulled over and stopped as well. The driver was wondering what could have prompted that, out here in the middle of nowhere, when he saw the familiar that had been flying above the car in front of them plummet to the earth. At the same time, he experienced a powerful nausea. It became difficult for him to continue driving. He hurriedly pulled the car over into the shoulder and looked into the rearview mirror, prepared to excuse himself. "Excuse me, I suddenly felt... Master?" The scene reflected in the rearview mirror was abnormal. The middle-aged mage, his teacher, had collapsed, his body limp and his face pale. "This is bad. We have to..." Suppressing his nausea, the driver turned to the senior apprentice in the passenger seat and gave another shudder. The senior apprentice's face was also so pale, and he was twitching. What looked like bruises were emerging on the backs of his hands and neck. Then the driver noticed. Small bruises were rising on his own arms, worming their way into his body. A scream echoed into the car. Silence followed. Several minutes later, the car slowly started moving. The other cars stopped around it likewise, and began to move as soon as their engines started, every one of them making a U-turn, heading back into Snowfield. Inside the car, making its way into town, the blank-eyed driver announced, "I'm so looking forward to going back to Snowfield." "Yes, it's a nice city. We've got to get good seats to watch the Holy Grail War," the senior apprentice in the passenger seat answered, his eyes equally vacant. The bruises that had formed on their bodies had largely faded and their complexions were recovering. Their minds, however, had become something else entirely. "Uli, ok, shippy." Listening to their master's cheerful wails, they drove this car across the wasteland to the city of Snowfield, where the chaos of battle raged on. On this day, at this moment, the city of Snowfield became a lenient prison. A prison that let no one leave and refused no one entry. It looked almost as if the city had a will of its own and was gobbling people up. Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, you can't leave. Northern Snowfield, the large ravine. What's happening? Who are those heroic spirits? Tine Shelk. Was it? It was Tine. It was Tine in the anime, right? Tine Shelk poked her face out of the back of Vimana, a flying noble phantasm Gilgamesh had drawn from his treasury. The scene that had taken place was burned into her eyes. Gilgamesh had squared off with the mystery archer. A mysterious female servant had interrupted their battle. Gilgamesh had looked obviously displeased at the interruption, but the events had moved on before that intruder had a chance to respond. That instant, the mysterious archer, who was one blow from the female heroic spirit, one blow Let me try this. It's a weird one. That instant, the mysterious archer, who one blow from the female heroic spirit had buried under a mountain rubble, okay, that does make sense, had sent the rubble flying like a volcanic eruption. Numerous giant boulders were flung so high in the air that Tine had to crane her neck to see them. Several of the stones suddenly shattered, and arrows shrouded in vast quantities of magical energy appeared from among the fragments. The mysterious archer had flown up with the rubble and loosed countless arrows from behind the soaring rocks. The rain of arrows, each one accompanied by its own tornado, sped down at Gilgamesh and the female heroic spirit, pulling the shards of the shattered boulders into the swirling vacuums as they came. An instant later, Gilgamesh launched weapons from his gate of Babylon, while the female heroic spirit knocked multiple arrows to the bow that appeared in her hands and fired them at the same time. The weapons and arrows, fired at speeds too fast for Tine's eyes to follow, were warding off the violent whirlwinds one after another. It's only to be expected of His Majesty, but just who is that heroic spirit? Based on the fact that she had appeared on horseback, she was most likely rider. Based on her skill with a bow, however, she could just as easily be archer. But that would mean 3 different archers had manifested in the city. Or can she use a bow with that much force, despite not being an archer? Impossible, Tine thought. That would be like an archer competing with other classes in swordsmanship. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's a really fun... Okay. Yeah, okay, you get that one. The King of Heroes had swords like Ea and Merodach, despite being an archer. But leaving out their fearsome power, he would never attempt to match the saber class head-on in pure swordsmanship. That, at least, was what Tine thought then. The scene playing out before her eyes, however, defied common sense. The female heroic spirit held out her right hand beside herself, and a horse appeared there. She then lightly mounted it, and vigorously rode it up the ravine. The cloth wrapped around her arm was still overflowing with concentrated divinity. She circulated the potent magical energy into the horse through its bridle. Horse and rider, moving as a single organism, rapidly threaded their way through the rain of gales. Massive chunks of rubble had fallen back to earth. She began to gallop lightly over them, eventually riding even the boulders still in midair. Witnessing the female heroic spirit traveling backwards up the waterfall of rubble, Tine was sure she can only be rider. That would mean that a hero who naturally possessed the qualities of an archer had taken the form of a rider in this war. It might be reasonable to suppose that the force of a bow had been enhanced by the divine aura flowing from the cloth wrapped around her arm. Then that cloth is a noble phantasm, one that strengthens its user's abilities. As she watched, the female heroic spirit climbed high into the sky, and at last arrived at the peak of the falling rubble. Then, pinpointing the figure of the mystery archer below her, she drew her bow taut atop her steed. Okay. Yeah, she's got a horse. I have no clue who this is meant to be. She almost looks to me like what, what's her face? Ares wears in FGO. But I doubt it's that. Huh. One thing I'll say, I have been starting to buy the Japanese light novels. And so I'm wondering if I can contact the person who put together these PDFs and give them HD non-JPEG versions of these pictures if I can scan them. The mystery archer noticed her presence and turned to look at her through a cloth that covered his head. The horsewoman, I guess that's what it is. That just makes me think of Uma Musume, though. The horsewoman was facing him, the sun at her back, and drawing her bow coated in concentrated divinity. I see. Archer! Queen of Treachery. Bearing her powerful animosity, the woman put her whole being into the shout. So it's you, Queen of Treachery. He readied his own bow, not even bothering to evade, and made concentrated divinity well up from the cloth around his own arm, Then he intercepted the 5 arrows the horsewoman. I mean, it's correct, but it's still weird to read. He then intercepted the 5 arrows the horsewoman had fired with as many arrows of his own. The arrowheads collided without so much as an inch of deviation. The magical energy they had been imbued with clashed, rebounded, and assailed the surroundings as a great wind. While blocking the wind, the pebbles it carried with her own magecraft, Tine watched for the archer's next movement. But it was the horsewoman who moved first. She was refining a divine aura, even more potent than before, behind the archer's back. She had leapt off her steed as she fired, and using it as a decoy, had gotten behind her enemy. Impudent, the archer muttered and started to turn. Before he had the chance, however, an arrow struck his back, just where his heart is, at the speed of sound. And yet, for some reason, no sooner had the arrowhead struck the man's body, struck the cloth draped over his head, than it splintered, scattering to the winds without eating into his flesh. I knew it. The rider he called Queen groaned at the sight. More than surprise, the groan seemed to imply the confirmation of her conjecture. I see, Gilgamesh muttered. He temporarily reboarded Vimana, then surveying, he had temporarily reboarded Vimana and been surveying the events from the ground. Has your majesty learned something? Tine timidly inquired. How that bowman was able to defend against all my noble phantasms, the King of Heroes replied amusedly, as well as why he failed to defend against a blow of that mere horsewoman's fist. There is a reason, then? A trifle. His armor is special, that's all. His armor? Tine asked, turning to look at the archer, who had returned to the earth. The archer was wearing almost nothing that could be called armor. The only thing covering his upper body were the strange patterned cloth draped over his head and the patterned cloth wrapped around him. It is most likely the hide of some species of demonic or divine beast. It can have been no, okay, come on, dude, please. It can have been no small task to work it into that form, but it was probably originally something like an Ugalu. I know those, I fought those in FGO, in Babylonia. Gilgamesh gave the name of a Babylonian monster as an example, but that was not enough to satisfy Tine. You mean that this hide repelled all of your majesty's tremendous blows? She pressed. Numbers do not enter into it. Divine or demonic beasts sometimes reject human civilization itself in that way. A moment ago I hit him with everything and everything. Not only my first-class armaments, but even the noble phantasm of lower orders that I would ordinarily not bother firing. I do not believe he repelled them all with skill alone. If he did so with his body or some form of magical energy, however, it would have failed to explain the fact that the hide is completely unharmed. At that point, the King of Heroes narrowed his eyes, tightened his grip on Merodach, the Sword of Selection. Occasionally, a creature of that sort appears. A singularity that rejects human civilization itself. At the very least, no tool created by humans can pierce that skin. The set of Gilgamesh's lips softened slightly. What is it, your majesty? Oh, just that if he skinned the beast himself, I have high hopes for him. Seeing the wry smile of the King of Heroes' face, Tine realized what those words meant. This heroic spirit, the epitome of strength, hoped that the archer standing before him possessed strength to rival his own. Surely, he would have condemned an ordinary heroic spirit who relied on the power of a noble phantasm to swat away his treasures as irreverent. Tine was reconfirmed in the belief that the bowman under her gaze was a fearsome enemy. He was, after all, sufficient to give this great and proud king high hopes. Even without his armor, sweeping my noble phantasms aside with his bow was a feat of consummate skill. It was worthy of praise, although I would never be so common. But what are those noble phantasms wrapped around both of their arms. Most likely some sort of legacy a god forced on humans. Observe, they are the same item, but each of them uses it in an entirely different manner. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I'm thinking that the cloak is the Nemean lion, right? Because I'm like 99% certain it's Hercules. So it's probably the Nemean lion as the cloak. But then the thing on their arms, I don't know. Tine did as the King of Heroes bid her, casting a... Oh, observe, okay. That's why. I'm like, what did he ask? Tine did as the King of Heroes bid her, casting a spell for sensing magical energy on her eyes and started staring closely at the battle. There was indeed a difference. The horsewoman was circulating the high-density magical energy, worthy of the name divinity, throughout her body. The bowman, however, only applied it to his weapons. He never accepted the power into himself. Why? If he channeled that divine aura into a body with the qualities... Oh, okay, so, like, here's the thing. I'm so used to reading these, and there's, like, actual errors that when I read something and it's confusing, I stop. But, like, it's just, like, it is correct, right? If you channel that divine aura into a body with the qualities his has. Now, that is correct. It's just I'm so used to that, but even if it's just an awkward phrasing, he could probably overwhelm his opponent. The King of Heroes grunted and pondered Tine's words. Then a shade of joy entered his expression, as if he discovered a curious toy. I merely find the gods I know disagreeable. But it seems that fellow despises the gods he believed in so deeply that he wants to kill them. He hates his gods? Comical, is it not? I'm sure it was those same gods who created that sturdy body of his. Imagine maintaining such a force of will while despising his very existence. This fool shows promise. Gilgamesh's words had not yet reached the horsewoman, but as she loosened arrow after arrow at the archer, she shouted, Why? Why do you not take my father's power? The power of the war belt into yourself. Oh, is she a child of Zeus too? Are you looking down on me? Mocking me? My father. Is she one of the Greek gods, maybe? Or like no, probably a child of one of the gods. The power of a god is not for housing in one's own body, the bowman answered solemnly, parrying her shots, each of which was imbued with the power to destroy armies, with the bow in his hand. What? When she heard that, the horsewoman finally noticed the thing flowing deeply into her opponent's body. A power like scorched poison, utterly unlike that of a god, filled the bowman. He was using the power to control the energy that radiated from the war belt by force, as if was his familiar. Readying his bow, imbued with the mingled powers of a god and something else, the archer uttered words like a curse, imbued with the mingled rage and scorn from behind his cloth. It shall be forced to submit, trampled underfoot, and ruled by the might of man. The same time, police station. Report for you, sir. Confirming multiple responses thought to be heroic spirits in the northern ravine. One of them is thought to be Archer, Gilgamesh. Having received the secret report, the chief of police heaved a large sigh. Then he turned his gavel on the girl mastermind sitting on his sofa and eating a cake which she had produced seemingly from nowhere. You're gonna have to explain this, Francesca. Explain what? I'm pretty sure I explained the summoning of the true heroic spirits before we even started. What I want to know is, who summoned what? Francesca looked away from the chief, who glared quietly at her, a finger on her chin. What? You want to know that in a Holy Grail war? Nope. I know that heroic spirit's identity and its master's information, so I could tell you, but on the other hand, it doesn't seem like Faldius or his bosses trust you that much. Whatever shall I do? Don't play dumb. Between this and the incident last night at the Opera House, it's doubtful whether the participating mages have any idea of secrecy. Openly attacking a casino hotel in the middle of the day gets the townspeople involved. The dead apostle hasn't shown himself yet, but I've gotten reports of people injured by broken glass. Oh, also, The elder status we read about. Yeah, that's like a dead apostle elder, meaning like one of the dead apostles who existed before Jesus. So, yeah, okay, thousands of year old. Okay, Francesca beat up an elder dead apostle. Great. The chief's tone became slightly rougher as he spoke. Francesca turned to him with a gloomy smile. Oh, I thought we were prepared to involve civilians the moment we decided on this city as a stage for the Grail War. Not in such a visible form. We summoned that caste in order to win reliably while still keeping damage to a minimum. If any masters willing to involve the people of the city for no reason, I believe they should be eliminated immediately. You really are uptight. Well, it's not like I'm out to slaughter the townspeople either, so I'll give you a hint. Francesca giggled. You know God? I don't mean the one the kids of the Holy Church worship. I mean gods from a different mythology. You see, back when this planet was still overflowing with magical energy, what they call the Age of Gods, all sorts of concepts and foreign bodies had relations with humans. They had intelligence, but at the end they were different creatures. Francesca stared into the distance as she spoke, narrowing her eyes as if at a fond memory. Okay. I'm thinking she might be a true ancestor or something similar. When that happened, as you might expect, there were some mix-ups. Lots of comedies and tragedies came out of them. Well, it's also true when it's just between humans, but anyway, when your partner's basically a massive energy, the mix-ups and misunderstandings are on a whole different level, so the laughter and sadness both get scaled up, you see. What are you trying to say? Of course, hate boils up to match, too. Then, turning her attention to the swirls of magical energy she could sense from the direction of the ravine, she ecstatically recalled what she had seen the previous evening. It's true that his class is archer, but his essence has totally changed. I guess it makes sense to say he's about half Avenger now. Avenger? The chief had heard from Faldius that the Einsburns had summoned a heroic spirit of that special class in the Third Holy Grail War. Apparently, it had not been very strong, for a heroic spirit had been swiftly eliminated. He remembered, however, that Faldius, who had the data an actual participant had left in his own puppet, had told him with a grave expression, I have no definite proof. But if that heroic spirit had won, though, the world itself might have ended. Anyway, it was a weird one. Who is that gave him that, I wonder? If an entity with the same nature as that heroic spirit had appeared, surely that made it unbelievably dangerous. The chief scowled. Francesca shrugged her shoulders and told him about the bowman, Avenger. Told him cheerfully, delightedly, as she cherished the very vengeful grudge of that heroic spirit. Although, that heroic spirit's grudge isn't against humanity. It's against the old gods who've already gone and disappeared or rotted away or hidden themselves somewhere these days, like in space. The large ravine. The bowman and the horsewoman with the same noble phantasm continued their battle. I don't know any of Zeus's daughters, so I don't know who she could be. Maybe a figure that I just straight up have never heard of. The horsewoman had produced a spear and a bow from magical energy with a pronounced tint of divinity that was native to her frame. She made skillful use of both in conjunction with her trusty steed as she kept up her assault on the bowman. Could that horse be one of her noble phantasms? Tine wondered as she watched the combat. It displayed movements like those of a phantasmal beast and inconceivable in an ordinary horse as the horsewoman attempted to drive the bowman further into a corner. But then, as if it had sensed something, the horse stopped and reared up on its hind legs. As it did so, countless weapons embedded themselves in the ground between her and the bowman. I thought I told you to not interfere! The horsewoman glared at the man who fired them. Fool! That man, the king of heroes, spat back. I have no ear to lend to a woman so ill-mannered as to not dismount in the presence of a king. He stood in Vamana's prow, gazing calmly down. The space behind him glittered with the points of the innumerable noble phantasms that slept in his treasury. The horsewoman temporarily distanced herself from the two archers and stared suspiciously at the man aboard Vamana. A king? You? Ignorant as well as impudent. You may be called a queen, but I suppose you are one of the thieves who squabbled over bits of my garden in my absence. Sickening. There was no sarcasm. His frigid words were charged with unmistakable contempt. You are not worthy of existing in the same place as the true king, myself. Begone. With the air of a man sweeping a pebble from the roadside with his foot, the King of Heroes launched a swarm of noble phantasms from his gate of Babylon. Instinct must have warned the horsewoman that taking a direct hit from them would be unwise. Skillfully handling her steer, she weaved her way through the rain of noble phantasms. Then, the cloth-covered bowman loosed a pointed shaft, his aim fixed on the horse. The horse dodged the arrow by a hair's breadth, but lost its balance. The second wave from the gate of Babylon was bearing down on the horse and rider. Instantly, even more powerful magical energy welled up from the horsewoman. She rolled together the magical energy within herself, thick with divinity, and the pure magical energy welling from the cloth, which could be called divinity itself, and channeled it into the spear in her right hand. Is she a lancer? The horsewoman hurled her spear at the King of Heroes, endeavoring to repel the countless noble phantasms bearing down on her with brute force. The spear, cloaked in divine aura, drove through the second shower of noble phantasms, hurtling towards Gilgamesh's heart. The King of Heroes, however, did not move a step. He deployed a number of shield noble phantasms from his gate of Babylon. The spear, closing in on him, drove through several of them before coming to a halt. It's been bugging me for a little while now. What's with that ridiculous number of noble phantasms? The horsewoman sounded exasperated. Gilgamesh ignored her and pronounced with an air of indifference. Coming against me with the power of a god of all things. Your insolence shows no bounds, woman. And surveying the horsewoman, he grinned. It seemed his interest had slightly been piqued. You may not have come through unscathed, but I see you did manage to take several high-ranking noble phantasms. The horsewoman was losing an not inconsiderable amount of blood from the wounds on her shoulders and sides. Several of the noble phantasms she had not been able to completely parry must have grazed her. Even so, she comported herself as a warrior astride her mount. Seeing that, the King of Heroes gave a nod and considered. It appears the blood of a god I do not know runs thick through your veins. I thought my pleasure spoiled, but with both of you as my opponents, this should at least serve as a warm-up for my fulfilling of my agreement with my friend. King of Heroes still made a show of complacency, but there was no carelessness or conceit in his eyes. You are touchstones. You may not fall without my consent. To the King of Heroes, a serious warm-up meant testing everything he had prepared against the battle with his friend, including wiles he would not normally employ. If you insist on continuing to get in my way, I'll eliminate you first, Golden King. At that point, the King of Heroes gave a scornful laugh. In your way, am I? Are you certain you do not mean your salvation, girl who calls herself a queen? What? Gilgamesh glanced at the bowman standing imposingly before a heap of rubble as he dubiously answered the rider. If you cannot realize when you're being toyed with, how do you intend to hunt the man? You say I'm being toyed with? As heroic spirits, you and he belong to different orders. You cannot be so cheap as to fail to realize that. Even Tine, observing the heroic spirits from the shadow of Vamana, was able to grasp the King of Heroes' words. Masters in the Holy Grail War were granted the simple clairvoyant ability to know their opponent's general strengths and weaknesses, divided into status, strength, agility, and so on. The way this information appeared to each master varied depending on the sensibilities. Tine visualized it as the difference in the speeds of currents of 6 rivers flowing from a mountain. Oh, that's cool. Because again, that's sort of like your D&D stats. So she sees them as different amounts of water in a river. That's a cool, like, natural way of doing it. I love that. I love that because, First Nations, yeah. As far as she could see, All the rivers ran swiftly for the King of Heroes and the cloth-shrouded bowmen. Compared to them, the horsewoman's flowed at a gentle pace. The river, governing luck in particular, stood out as slow in its course. Even in simple comparison of basic abilities, she seemed to be at a slight disadvantage. It appeared that she was raising her natural power several ranks by housing the divine aura of her noble phantasm in her own body. Against an opponent who would possess the same noble phantasm, however, it would not be sufficient to give her an advantage. There might possibly be a difference between housing the power of a god in one's own body and using it as a tool, but Tine was unable to conjecture what effect the difference might have. While Tine pondered, the horsewoman's expression stiffened. She shot a piercing glance at the bowman. I know he outclasses me. Just for an instant, the tone of her voice matched her youthful appearance. Then she launched into a bold declaration, bearing her unadulterated animosity. After all, I was killed by this man. What? For a moment, Tine froze, not comprehending the rider's behavior. She knew what the words meant, but she could not understand the point of shouting something that would give others a hint to the horsewoman's true name. She was acquainted with the bowman, and against the King of Heroes, concealing her true name likely meant little. Still, it was impossible to know where a familiar might be watching. Could she afford to reveal a clue to her true name under these conditions? Perhaps the horsewoman was more impulsive than Tine had imagined. The thought turned Tine's mind to the true names of the enemy heroic spirits. A woman called a queen, skilled in horse riding, who used a bow and spear. A hero who killed her. A cloth noble phantasm they both possess. An animal pelt that denies humanity. Inside Tine, who had studied a wide range of myths and epics in preparation for the Holy Grail War, a number of puzzle pieces fell into place and formed the figures of the two heroes. She did not, however, accept the answer that easily. The horsewoman was one thing, but the impression she got from the bowman was just too far removed from the hero she had pictured. Then, as if to prove it, the horsewoman shouted, "But my end is of no importance!" She stared at the bowman, then at Tine. Tine stiffened under her unexpected gaze. The horsewoman, however, made no move to attack her, and returned her glare to the bowman. "Answer me! Why did you aim for that child?" The archer's response, in contrast, was dispassionate. It's only natural to target a master who carelessly shows herself alongside her servant. Though a child, she is a mage who has joined battle with a resolve to crush her enemies. I have no cause to make allowances for her. Of all people, you, queen, whose origin is war itself, ask me this. She's not Athena. No. You know what? Let's see here. Queen that Heracles killed. Oh my god, it's Hippolyta. Okay. Yep. Okay. Wow. Wait. Hippolyta? Does that mean we have Hippolyta and we have Oberon? We could do almost all of a Midsummer Night's Dream. Okay. Wow. Interesting. Okay. All right. That's cool. I mean, you might be like, why would you look this up? It's spoilers. And to that, I say, I don't care. I felt like I was so close to knowing the answer, but I just didn't know the actual thing. Okay. Quiet. Okay, so you queen whose origin is war itself, ask me this. Quiet. Shut your mouth and wipe it off your face. I told you to answer, but I don't want to hear commonplace arguments that sound like they can't come from the mouth of a stranger. The horsewoman bellowed irrationally. Rematerializing her spear, she pointed at the bowman and continued her questioning. You were the one who bent every rule of the battlefield into whatever shape you desired with your strength and cunning, and that's why I believed you. That you at least were a man who would never do such a thing. Her attention was now completely focused on the bowman. From Tine's perspective, it seemed like the perfect opening. However, my king, leave them be. Watching two clowns slander each other is a form of entertainment. Despite what the King of Heroes said, There was no disorder or inattention in the magical energy that cloaked him. Tine could, however, sense something like a curiosity to know more of his opponent's natures. The bowman, at least, must have had considerability to arouse the interest of her haughty king. It was the horsewoman, however, who was on Tine's mind. That rider is angry that Archer targeted me more than she is about being killed herself. Why? Tine had offered up her life for the sake of her people. From the time she had determined to summon the King of Heroes and eliminate the mages, she had been prepared to have the tables turned on her and killed instead. From her perspective, the bowman's argument was sound. Does she not view me as an enemy? Indifferent to the girl's confusion, the horsewoman shouted again from atop her horse. I have heard that you were merciless in battle, that you even pillaged the streets of enemy towns. I'm sure you used cowardly sneak attacks too, if it served your goals. But that would not shake the fame of a hero if it was done for the sake of his ambition. The mounted girl raised her voice still higher, her manner more mature than her appearance. But whatever the circumstances, even if you face a cursed child who would bring disaster to the world, I was sure you would never gleefully aim your bow at a child. You would be the last person to forgive that. Where did you abandon the name that was the glory of the gods, that echoed in awed and reverent song throughout our native land to the ends of the fertile plain of Thermodon? Abandoning herself to momentum and rage, the horsewoman made to shout her enemy's name, not caring that doing so will reveal her own when... Silence! One word from the bowman froze the air around them. At the same time, a shadow, the same reddish-brown color that stained the man's body, welled up and wriggled like a living thing. It was hate, it was fear, it was scorn, it was regret, it was envy, it was pity. It was rage, it was resignation, it was malice, it was mortification, it was despair, and therefore, it was empty. From the depths of that shadow, like a range of emotions distilled to its absolute limits, came a voice that seemed to place a curse on all those who heard it. Even the bold swordswoman looked daunted for a moment, and Tine thought her own heart might stop. Only the King of Heroes remained calm, his lips actually curled in a faint smile like a critic viewing comedy. The hero that name belonged to no longer exists, the bowman continued, ignoring all three reactions. No, he is no longer even a hero. He was a fool who ingratiated himself to pleasure-besotted tyrants and paid for it by burning off the robe of earth, his human soul in flames and thunderbolts. On his deathbed, he broke his oath and chose pleasure over pain. Just realized I forgot to... Sorry about that. Who are you? What do you want? The queen asked, cold sweat running down her cheeks. She was convinced that the man was not the great hero she knew. I am but a human being. I reject the gods of Olympus, your father Ares included, and I will trample and defile them. I am simply an avenger, and I live for nothing else. Yes, my flesh and blood, my very soul, is the shadow of a fool who fell so low that he became a god. Okay, so yeah, it's Alter Avenger Heracles, which, why is this not a 5-star? Oh my god, right? The police station. Francesca twisted with excitement, remembering the heroic spirit Basdelot had summoned, which she viewed through her crystal ball early that morning with his permission. My guts are just about to boil thinking about it. The sense of living only to defile and blaspheme the gods. I love it. It reminds me of my best friend, you know? I bet they get along great if I brought them together. But then, their grudges are against totally different gods. Oh my god, who are you? Oh my god, who are you? Like, you... Oh, okay. The chief began to leave the room, ignoring Francesca, who was rambling incomprehensibly in a world of her own. Oh, where are you off to? To deal with the situation, obviously. Are you crazy? It looks like you had a good match with that assassin girl yesterday, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing you can do about the kids up in the ravine. Francesca closed her legs and addressed the chief with a serious look. If you're not careful, King Goldie might kill you the minute you butt in. The chief was well aware what she said was correct, but as a mage who had to put the secrecy of magic first, and as a police chief who had to ensure the safety of his city, he could not sit quietly by. I just can't leave them to it. At this rate, a stray shot could easily demolish a building. I'll sound out Faldius for help as well, although I doubt it'll do any good. Even if he can't directly intervene in fighting, it's better to tackle the cover-up sooner than later. Oh, you don't have to get so worked up. I've already taken measures. What? Francesca grinned obscenely at the dubious chief and pronounced a sentence that would cause him even more headaches. You see, the servant I summoned is heading there to interrupt them even as we speak. Oh boy, who? I see. The horsewoman heard the bowman's voice, filled with resentment and determination, and the fury vanished from within her. Then you are no longer him. She narrowed her eyes, steadied her breathing, and gently stroked her horse's neck. In an instant, the divine aura enveloping her intertwined with her own magical energy, rapidly increasing in its purity. This is... Sensing the magical energy through the ley lines of the land, Tina gasped in spite of herself. The Holy Grail War system, at least if it was identical to the system in Fuyuki which Tina had investigated before, should be incapable of summoning a divine spirit. The extent to which a heroic spirit once summoned could wield divine power, however, was something Tina did not know. If the horsewoman who Tina thought she was, then she must be a demigod with a god for a father. She lacked the power of a full divine spirit. But what would happen if that cloth-shaped noble phantasm supplied the difference? Tina's face paled, but she neither feared nor doubted. At her side stood a king, who she paid greater reverence than any god. In that case, I will not try to put you on the right path. I will eliminate you as an enemy, along with the Golden King. When he heard those words, a fiendish smile stole over the King of Heroes' features. I see you know how to bark, girl. His grin was a picture of arrogance. There was none of his earlier scorn and contempt in it. The King of Heroes had been the first to notice. The presence of the rider, who had been running wild, allowing her emotions to get the better of her, had instantly switched over to that of a warrior befitting the divine aura that cloaked her. And at that present moment, the eyes of the King of Heroes, which was less proud, had seen through to her opponent's true nature, what she was about to attempt to become. But because the king was a king, he stuck to his pride. You have some nerve to lump me, a king, in with a mere avenger. I shall grace your barbarity with a laugh, along with your farce. It was true that, in this Holy Grail War, the King of Heroes was neither conceited nor careless. So long as he was a king, however, his arrogant disposition would always remain his natural pose. The bowman, however, twisted his lips in a brutal grin behind his monster hide. A good omen. I believe in the most forgotten tyrants. I may not believe in the forgotten tyrants, but perhaps the stars do move our fates. As he spoke, ominous magical energy coiled around the arrow knocked to his bow. The aura it gave off was such that an amateur mage, or even an ordinary human, would have noticed it. It is only the onset of the war, and I have the opportunity to fell a pair of demigods. The quality of the arrow was not all that had changed. He had dropped his earlier daunting pose for a more natural posture. The bow and arrow hung loosely at his side. At first glance, it almost looked as if he had abandoned his combat stance entirely. In spite of his posture, however, the eerie pressure he radiated only continued to increase. The average fighter would be assailed by a terror that was almost despair the instant they set eyes on him. His opponents, however, were a queen clad in divine power, and the original Hero King wrapped in golden radiance. Faced with two rulers who showed not the slightest fear, the The bowman forced muddy, black energy to ooze from every inch of his frame and... Alright, that's enough of that. Just as all three heroic spirits seemed about to make their moves, the guileless voice of a boy echoed through the snow-covered forest that extended as far as the eye could see. What? Teenay's bewildered expression came a moment after the boy's interruption. Huh? 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 The queen widened her eyes in shock. The bowman narrowed his eyes slightly, and the King of Heroes ran a suspicious eye over the surrounding scenery. They should have been standing in a large ravine with only sparse vegetation, and yet, before the boy's words even had time to register, trees had completely filled their view. They were standing in the midst of a forest dominated by the white of snow that lay thick on the conifers, overwhelming the hues of their needles and bark. Powdered snow fell on Teenay's bare, slender arms, and she felt the chill through her skin. Forced teleportation? As she hurriedly gathered a layer of air around herself for protection, Tina attempted to conjecture what had just happened to them. But such advanced magecraft, practically magic, just isn't... Currently, there was nowhere near Snowfield. Ironically, yeah. There was nowhere near Snowfield where it would possibly be possible to see scenery like this. There was a great forest to the west, but the variety of trees was different, and despite the name Snowfield... Okay, there we go. Despite the name Snowfield, actual snowfall was rare in the region. It was also possible that they had been drawn into another world, a unique space called a reality marble, by a servant. Tina had heard that there were heroic spirits that employed such techniques. And yet, Tina's servant, the King of Heroes, showed no particular sign of alarm. "Do not lose your head," he told her. "It is merely an illusion." An illusion? Illusion was a diverse type of general-purpose magecraft. It could be used for concealing a specified place, confusing senses of direction in a specified area, or even cast on oneself to aid in training or reinforce suggestion. Most ordinary illusions, however, were ineffective against targets possessing magic circuits above a certain level, or a magic crest. As a result, very few mages attempted to master it as anything more than convenient general-use magecraft. In fact, Tina had experience having illusion cast on her in the past, but she was linked to the ley lines of the land and had strengthened her senses through them, so it had no effect on her. In the present circumstance, however, she could feel the cold even through the ley lines. Winged by magical energy links, we're definitely still in a canyon in the land of my ancestors. This really is an illusion then, but could there really be an illusion powerful enough to fool not just human senses, but the land itself? How many human mages could have reached that level? With a special medium such as powerful mystic eyes, it would be a different story, but in ordinary circumstances, an illusion that level would be considered beyond the realm of human mages. A new servant. She could not tell if this was work of a noble phantasm or of raw magecraft. At the very least, however, it was highly probable that the owner of that boy's voice was a new servant. This won't do. You all need to cool your heads. What are you thinking, playing your trump cards on the first day? Of course, rumor has it that certain people played their trump cards in the desert before the show even started. The boy's voice echoed through the entire snowy forest, but it was impossible to pin down where it had come from. It was almost as if each individual snowflake was acting as a speaker for it. Gilgamesh acted as if he had not heard the voice, and spoke with a tone of mild displeasure. To think there was another mannerless ruffian waiting to spoil my entertainment at the last moment. I do not know what you are after, but did you imagine you could deceive my eyes with this paltry illusion? Oh my, that's Gilgamesh, the King of Heroes for you, the whole human race's landlord, who enjoyed equal fame as the enlightened monarch and a despot. Looks like I can't pull the wool over your great, haughty, wise, and pedantic majesty's penetrating eyes. Whatever shall I do? An address that went beyond over-embellishment into obvious mockery sounded through the illusory forest in a boyish voice. Then, in an instant later, a different androgynous voice rang out behind Gilgamesh and Tine. Then, how about your ears, Gil? Tine turned and saw a heroic spirit. A heroic spirit with a face and build that could be taken as either male or female, and to which an indefinable trace of youth clung. A smooth, lean body that reminded Tine of a perfect beast. features so graceful and smooth it did not seem to matter if they were male or female. This servant is... Tina was able to immediately recognize what the entity that appeared before her, something appeared before her was. She had only viewed the events from a distance through a familiar, but there was this certainty that the heroic spirit Gilgamesh had confronted immediately after manifesting, the one he had made the crater in the desert with. Based on their timing and words, however, Tina also immediately recognized that this must be an illusory fake. In that case, how would the King of Heroes react? Before Tina could finish turning to look at him, Meridak flashed in his hand and dispersed the illusory heroic spirit. Who gave you permission to mimic my friend's form and voice? A searing tremor crossed the pass between them to shake Tina's magic circuits. She was able to imagine the King of Heroes was likely seething with cold rage rather than abandoning himself to an outburst of emotion. And for attempting to use them to deceive me, even 10,000 deaths would be too kind. I will make you regret your rash act using every device humankind has ever created purely to inflict more pain. Once more, the boy's voice rang out through the snowy forest. Don't be mad, Your Majesty. It was just a mischievous fool's joke. Calling itself a fool, it begged the king's pardon in name only. At that, however, Gilgamesh flashed a look of anger more intense than ever before. His angry roar echoed in the forest as if to rebuke the place itself. Simpleton! A fool is one who brings others merriment simply by being. It seemed he had strong personal view of fools. His bearing was even haughtier than usual, and his words seethed with an undisguised rage. And yet you call yourself a fool and attempt to make a boorish excuse of your being one. You are not even third-rate. You cannot even call yourself a fool. You are no more than an imbecile drunk on his own eccentricities. Gilgamesh's unprecedented display of anger made Tina break out in a cold sweat. Even the things that enraged him differed from the ordinary mass of humanity, so she, as his retainer, was unclear what she should be more wary of in the future. For the time being, she made a mental note that any discussion of fools was taboo in the king's presence. But then, she did not expect to have any opportunity to broach the subject herself. At that point, a crushing noise sounded from a distance away, and the trees that were supposed to be products of illusion made very real splintering sounds as they were mowed down. The illusion was apparently visible to the queen as well. She looked up to the sky, her face a mask of rage, and shouted, "Don't mock me! Where are you? Show yourself, dealer in deceptions!" She had appeared to compose herself earlier, but her fury had once again overtaken her. Tina was wondering what the queen had been shown when confusion suddenly entered her expression. "What?" The horsewoman abruptly froze, then shouted at empty air. "You're telling me to withdraw, master, but..." Hearing her voice, Tina immediately understood. The horsewoman's master must have telepathically instructed her to retreat. The bowman, meanwhile, continued to stand calm-faced amid the snow, as if he alone were not being forced to see any illusion. The horsewoman faced the bowman, shot a sad, almost pitying look, then hung her head. "Understood. Master, I'll obey." Still astride her horse, she made her spear vanish, faced the King of Heroes and the bowman, and declared, "We'll meet again, Golden King. And you, self-deceiving avenger. Next time, I swear to face you as a warrior, as martial etiquette demands." Do you imagine I would allow a brigand who this is him. Do you imagine I would allow a brigand who irreverently seeks one of my treasures to leave this place? You're a king, aren't you? Narrow-mindedly pursuing a fugitive doesn't suit a king. You want to chase me? Get down off your throne and run like a warrior. Tina expected the King of Heroes to respond with indignation. Gilgamesh, however, grinned fearlessly and made no move. "You are fortunate," he addressed her back. "Ordering me to descend from my throne is worthy of death, but I was already forgetting my position as king when I faced him. I will not call it I hate that word, self-admonition, but I will grant you a pardon in honor of my reunion with my friend. Accept this honor with gratitude. When he had finished his roundabout declaration, Gilgamesh turned to look at the other archer. Of course, I cannot guarantee that he will turn a blind eye to you. As if in response, the boy's voice rang through the snow. What's this? Is Her Majesty leaving? Well, I'm in a bit of a predicament myself, so let's retreat for a moment, true archer. Or would you prefer Avenger? Gilgamesh then glared at the forest itself. Your sentence is unchanged, base fiend. Even mongrels are beyond you, he declared ill-humoredly. After declaring the boy's voice a fiend, the King of Heroes turned to the bowman and delivered a royal proclamation. It is meaningless to conceal your true name any longer, mongrel. Rather, if your goal is to defile half of yourself, would not naming yourself bring you closer to that ambition? Arrogant to the last, Gilgamesh gave the bowman an order. You have my royal permission. Speak your own true name. The bowman cracked a wry smile at the absurd command. Then he shouldered his bow and beneath his leather covering, slowly opened his mouth to speak. My name is Alcides. Is that like the... Okay, well, there's a good shot of him there. Is that like the original name of him? Well, transform form of Archer Heracles. Okay. Yes. Okay, it is his birth name. Okay, it's his birth name. Sounds good. That's all I needed to see. It is funny that, comes up the Fate Wiki, and then it's like, yeah, by the way, here's other stuff. Yeah, okay, so it is the human birth name of Heracles. God, that is a cool design. I can actually see how he turns into... Like, I can see this as, like, a younger, more lithe version of the Heracles that we know. Okay. Oh, well, here we go. I guess we're going into it. The horsewoman heard that name and wordlessly shook her head. Tina did not understand the import of that name at first. Soon, however, she singled out a sliver of memory from within her brain. The child of Amphitryon and Alcmene, in whose veins flows the blood of the Mycenaean royalty. She remembered it was the childhood name of a great hero, the name he had been given as a human. There we go. Golden Hero. Or Golden King. Wait, Golden... this is... Who's saying this? Cannot hope to equal... Okay, so it's him. Golden King, mightiest of kings, who the kings of my acquaintance cannot even hope to equal. We shall meet again. Next time I shall trample the divine power that slumbers in your innermost depths beneath my feet. He had barely finished speaking when the muddy magical energy that oozed from him enveloped him completely. It bored an empty hole in the forest's snow-covered floor. An instant later, even the mud was gone, and the bowman had vanished completely, as if he had never existed at all. Well then, some other time, your majesties, if you're ever in the mood for depravity, give me a call, okay? After all, I do have my own origins in folly and madness. Ha 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 ha. Folly and madness. I don't know who this is then. The voice still had... If it wasn't an innocent boy's voice, I would have said, like... I mean, is this an author? Because there's a couple, but none of the authors sound like innocent boys. The voice still had the quality of an innocent boy's, but its laughter echoed insanely through the forest. The voice had barely faded when the snowfield vanished like a mirage and the original ravine stood out around Tine and the heroic spirits. The horsewoman, who had remained throughout, surveyed Tine and for some reason flashed a faint smile. Then, clasping her horse's bridle, she gave her name. Now that he's given his true name, suppose it's pointless to hide mine from you. Shaking her head in exasperation, the queen raised her voice. I am Hippolyta, child of Ares, the god of war, and Otrera, a priestess of Artemis. I am the war chief of the proud Amazons. Golden King and young vassal, we shall meet again. No sooner had she finished her introduction than she galloped off on her horse. The horsewoman, Hippolyta, turned to specks of light along with her steed and disappeared completely. Tine had been through a shocking if brief time. While using Magecraft to steady her mind, she asked her own servant, the King of Heroes, "With all due respect, Your Majesty, was it all right not to give your own name?" At that, the King of Heroes slightly raised his eyebrows, then shook his head as if to dismiss the thought, and looked up with totally undaunted grin. "They are not worthy to hear my name. They stand before me once more. I will do them that honor." Tina nodded comprehendingly. She never doubted the king's word. Then, one problem did occur to her. What did the voice that sounded like a little boy's mean by a predicament? At Tina's question, the King of Heroes wiped the expression from his face and stared in the direction of the city, which was visible from the ravine. It probably meant the brigand that spoiled my reunion with my friend. I thought to dispel the curse of death with one swing of my property, but I never imagined it would conceal its tracks in such a form. The curse of death? Tina furrowed her brows. Fool, Gilgamesh declared with his usual fearless grin. Is it not discourteous to wear a look of worry in my royal presence? You are under my royal protection. If you have time to fear the curses, spend it in awe of me. Oh man, Gil's pretty good. Still going on. The same time, Colesman Special Corrections Center. In the monitoring room, the numerous scenes projected onto the banks of modern monitors through familiars and mystic surveillance devices created a warped atmosphere. The room's master, Faldius, furrowed his brows as he viewed the accumulating data. It appears that, as I thought, it'll be necessary to eliminate Basilot soon. No, his backers, the Scladio family, are likely the real problem. Regardless of the Grail War's outcome, we'll lose our grip on the reins sooner or later at this point. If that happens, we'll lose any means of stopping them, even with the help of other departments. No, even with the full power of the White House. Faldius inwardly wore a sour look, but he did not let it show on his face. This was not his only problem. The particulars of the Kuraoka's movement still eluded him, and as long as the servant they had summoned remained an unknown quantity, he could not afford to make careless moves. If the heroic spirit that Silver Wolf summoned, most likely the Babylonian clay doll, is a lancer, then the Kuraokas must have summoned Rider or Berserker. The heroic spirit the Silver Wolf had summoned in Kidu appeared to be Lancer. Jester Karcher and his clique, now corpses, appeared to have summoned the woman assassin. The chief of police had summoned Castor, Alexandre Dumas-Prère, and Tina Shelp commanded Archer, Gilgamesh, the King of Heroes. Ladiscardos appears to have some type of communication with the heroic spirit in the park. Possibility of that being Berserker is slim, in which case the heroic spirit the Kuraokas summoned is most likely Berserker. He knew that the Kuraokas... Oh, whoa! He knew that the Kuraokas had been attempting to summon Shi Huangdi, but he could not see the point of summoning such a heroic spirit, who must excel in devising tactics and stratagems as a berserker. So, like, just to reiterate, that's like the... Yeah, that's Qin Shi Huang. Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, just to double check, because I'm like 90% sure it is. Yeah. If Shi Huangdi had manifested as a berserker due to some sort of error, it was possible the Kuraokas were under the thumb of the mad servant. Yo! Berserker Qin Shi Huang would be crazy. All of that, however, was no more than Faldius' speculation. He had even considered sending his own servant, the true assassin, to investigate. In the unlikely event that the Kuraoka's servant was his assassin's natural enemy, however, he would end up losing a powerful pawn under his very nose. Just one thing after another. Kashura, who had summoned Saber, had been killed by the fake assassin. Kashura? Summoned Saber? Who's this? Doris Lucendra, who had summoned True Rider, refused to cooperate with or even contact Faldius. Haruri, who had been scheduled to summon the True Berserker, was out of contact. From Sigma, who should, following the order, have summoned Lancer, had only received the short message. I have definitely summoned something, but I have no idea what it is. Will report again when I learn its true name. Our object is not to use the Holy Grail to grant a wish. It is to go beyond that, to advance the analysis of the third magic itself. What would happen if you obtained the Grail and wished to obtain the third magic? Faldius suddenly wondered. He judged that no good would come of such childish speculations, however, and decided to abandon them. There's no need to insist on the outcomes of the individual battles, but our side does need to win. Tine Shelk did not seek the Grail. What would happen if she obtained it and wished for the destruction of the Snowfield Holy Grail system itself? Such worry set off alarm bells in Faldius's brain. In a worst-case scenario, we can have a double agent eliminate Tine. We would need to aim for an opportunity when the King of Heroes is in combat with another servant. Before that, we need to ascertain Saber's movements. We should have cameras on every significant part of the city, but none of them show that woman with glasses. I was sure she would make contact with the Einsburn homunculus when... They maintained surveillance of the white woman, the Einsburn homunculus. She had temporarily disappeared the previous night, but she was currently caught in their surveillance net. Strangely, however, she had been in and out of shopping malls, casinos, and other such places since this morning. Faldius could see no consistency in her behavior. Possibly a trap to throw us off? I assume she must have noticed she's being watched. It was entirely out of his hands. Problems were cropping up one after another. It was giving Faldius a headache. He could not help pressing a hand to the corners of his eyes. Chief Deoland. One of Faldius's Deoland subordinates, a woman, called out to him. What is it, Aludra? It's about the mages in the city who failed to become masters. We're observing some strange movements. Faldius looked at the report she handed him. Then at the several countless monitors. Strange indeed. Significant percentage of the mages that had left the city before noon. Many of them must have turned tail when they saw the crater of the desert. Many mages had also suffered injury at the hands of the fake assassin, the full-fledged fanatic. Under the circumstances, it's only natural for the mediocre mages to realize that the matter was beyond them and flee. The odd part was what happened next. All the mages that had fled the city that morning had turned their cars and bikes around and returned to Snowfield. Could they have been hired by some family as soon as they left the city? His first thought was an intervention by the clock tower. He considered it possible that they had observed the mages leave the city and promised them some form of compensation for becoming pawns of the clock tower. The hypothesis, however, was refuted by Aludra's next words. It's not just the mages, sir. What? All ordinary citizens who left the city on business, etc., after a certain time have turned back. An uneasy chill ran through Faldius. He keenly felt the inadequacy of his own awareness. Something was happening in the city, something on a scale greater than ordinary magecraft. He knew it was happening, but he did not know why. A barrier for clearing the area of people? No, they're returning to the city. I suppose it would have to be a barrier for drawing people in, but for what purpose? I've heard that in the 5th Fuyuki Grail War, there was a heroic spirit that tried to gather odd from civilians, but there were a lot of black boxes in the 5th Holy Grail War. He did not know what fate that heroic spirit had met. He had, however, received information there had been mass fainting incidents at the time, but the Holy Church had covered them up as gas leaks. Apparently, rumors that gas had leaked from unexploded chemical weapons dropped by the American military had spread among the local high school students, and Faldius's colleagues had conducted a follow-up operation to suppress counterfactual rumors, or so he remembered hearing. An unexploded chemical weapon. I wish it could be explained away with something like that. Considering our throughput, our hands are full, which is the crater incident. Snowfield has a population of 80,000. We've made arrangements so we can deal with matters even if they were all to disappear, but, if possible, I'd like to avoid something so troublesome. Or so Faldius thought, when he noticed that his hand was clenched tight to something. It was a balled-up scrap of notepaper covered in fragmentary writing. When Faldius spread it out, he saw it was a message clearly addressed to himself. Do you not notice? The barrier walls of this facility are thick. Therefore, it does not enter here. In this Holy Grail War, Faldius was contracted with the true assassin, Hassan-i Sabah, Hassan, however, rarely initiated conversation. In the first place, he seemed averse to actually speaking, so when he did communicate, it was usually through methods like this one. In addition, the writings always looked as if Faldius had scribbled them himself. It almost seemed designed to convince anyone who saw the heroic spirit assassin was entirely a delusion of Faldius's. And it is? Faldius muttered under his breath. As if in answer, compression artifacts started to run across the screen of one of the computers sending and receiving data. A row of characters popped up, weaving its way through the gaps and seared itself into Faldius's brain. It was a short line consisting of only an answer to Faldius's question. The cursed plague wind. 2 hours later, a cheap motel. We can finally go out. Vladiscardos opened the window curtains, stretched his arms high over his head, and basked in the incoming sunshine. I never expected him to get angry at me. Or to get that angry at me. Flat's big stretch only lasted a moment, then his shoulders drooped and he let out a sigh. I can't believe the catalyst that summoned you, Jack, wasn't something the professor prepared for me. It was all me jumping to conclusions. A gentlemanly voice. So yeah, we've heard the voice now, so we know what it sounds like for sure. A gentlemanly voice emanated from the steampunk-esque watch on his left wrist. It can't be anything compared to how I feel knowing I was summoned with a prize from a video game. Besides, shouldn't you be glad you got off with just a 2-hour lecture? Berserker, Jack the Ripper, had become a heroic spirit watch. Flat responded to his consolations with a little shake of his head. A whole 2 hours. Flat collapsed onto his bed, clutching his newly purchased cell phone and curled up dejectedly. Not 15 seconds after Flat had emailed the phone number to his teacher, Lord Elmaloy II, he had received an international call from England. The roughly 2-hour lecture and just under 30-minute policy meeting had only just concluded. Flat had barely picked up the phone when an angry voice roared out of it and launched into a lengthy sermon that even Jack, even in wristwatch form, could hear. It began with Flat running off to America on his own and extended to questioning on a variety of subjects until... Who the hell did you learn that summoning spell from? I refuse to believe that you looked it up on your own from materials in the Great Library. Was it Tosaka? The professor had asked. Oh, that's right. I should have just asked Rin. Okay, so Rin is at the clock tower. Okay. Actually, though, once I got here, I did this and that, and I sort of ended up summoning him without a circle or an incantation. Flat had answered truthfully, at which point, after several minutes of silence, the scolding had resumed, fiercer than before. Flat's mental exhaustion appeared severe, but Jack deliberately hurled more hard words at him all the same. Bear up. I heard the whole thing, and as far as I can see, it was concise, easily understood, and yet so sound as to brook no refutation. The problem lies with you supplying enough material to stretch such efficiently delivered lecture out to that length. Content yourself with only losing 2 hours of time. That's not it, Jack. Call me Berserker, and what is it then? In place of a head, Jack quizzically inclined his long-minute hand. While he's in the clock tower, the professor is hounded by so many responsibilities that he can't really afford to waste even a minute, Vlad explained with a calmer expression. Because of me, he had to waste a whole 2 hours. It makes me feel like I've really done something wrong. I see. You're more considerate of your professor than I thought. There are only 3 people who are the professor's apprentice, and... Wait, there are only 3 or 4 people who are the professor's apprentice and don't respect him. So there are a fair number, then. Still, even just hearing him speak over the phone, I could tell that he must be an exemplary teacher of magecraft. Bear in mind that you say he survived a past Holy Grail war. He must be a first-class mage as well. Jack merely related his honest impressions. Flat's face lit up. Of course! It's not just the Grail War. The professor solves all sorts of cases of the clock tower, too. There was the divided castle Adra, the Moonlit Crest contest serial killings, and Dangerous Beauty, vanishing at the towers of the Twin Faces, and the Super Express, Judgment Eye, and, I see. I'm sure you can continue to inflict a great deal of pain on your professor's stomach by arbitrarily naming his cases and tell them with enough bells and whistles for a steam engine. I didn't add anything. professor really is legendary at the clock tower. Oh, I know. Do you want to try talking to him on the phone a bit more? He's busy, like I told you just now, so I think I'd have to just be quick, but... Jack considered Flat's suggestion for a few moments and gave a big shake of his minute hand. Thank you, but, no. I only spoke with him for briefly earlier, but he seemed to see right through me. Yes. He almost had an air, almost as if he was going to rearrange me into something else. Ah, well, everyone talks to the professor does say that, but it's not like he means badly. Yes, I understand that it's not intentional. I'm sure it's just a habit of his. Nevertheless, his ability to see through to a person's true nature is vaguely terrifying. I worry that if I keep talking to him, I might end up satisfied with my own existence from that alone and pass on without ever getting a wish. I see. Flat sounded disappointed as he sat up in bed. But I have learned that he can be trusted, Jack continued. One of the more mage-like mages I know of would have humored me and used every trick in the book to coax me into abandoning the Holy Grail War and lure me to the clock tower. My very existence is a valuable research subject, after all. The fact that he did not must mean that he's either too soft-hearted for a mage, or a person capable of looking at the big picture instead of immediate loss or gain. They really only spoke very briefly, but Jack felt a certain degree of trust in, and a sort of sympathy for, the man called Lord Elmaloy II. The latter boiled down to the feeling that Flat must have put his professor through a great deal of trouble as well. Blissfully unaware that his own lack of inhibitions had produced a feeling of solidarity between his teacher and his servant over the telephone, Flat threw open the curtains and surveyed the bright sunlight outside. That's right, the professor's an amazing person. He can see way farther ahead of me and... Flat stood staring out the window. What's wrong? The wristwatch asked. It's better not to show your face too much. I believe your professor just instructed you to keep quiet and lay low. Oh, he did, but I was just thinking. The fog is awfully thick. What fog? Jack looked out the window as well, perhaps intrigued by a word with a connection to himself, but all he saw was a clear view illuminated by brilliant sunshine. What are you talking about? There's no fog out there. Jack wondered if Flat suffered from some disease of the eyes. A smile vanished from Flat's face as he answered. No, that's not what I mean. A fog of magical energy. I mean, there's been a little of it ever since I got here, so I thought it might just be due to the Grail's influence, but... Flat's speech was fragmented. He observed the scenery outside the window for a short while, then spoke in a grave manner. Berserker, this could be rather bad. What is it? We might be surrounded by something extremely dangerous. Is it an enemy heroic spirit attacking? Have they set a ward around the motel? Jack did not really understand what Flat meant by fog, but he did understand that, while Flat was a natural airhead, he was not the type of person to joke about such things. When he heard Flat's answer, however, Jack wished that he was. Oh, not just the motel. At minimum, this thing covers the whole city. Dang. Dang, alright. Wow. Hot damn. Hot damn reading this book is so good. Oh. It's incredible. I could probably open my eyes now. See, this is the problem. My eyes, it thinks I'm closing them. I'm not. They're open, okay? That's why, see, look, like they're open now, but it thinks they're not. I'm gonna take off my glasses. I don't need to read anymore. See? I take off my glasses and it's fine. I think. I can't tell. Should be. Okay. Thank you all for listening. I really enjoyed reading this. I am so looking forward to more. I hope they introduce a butt ton of new servants, because every time it's introducing them, it is so interesting to play the game of who is this. I mean, we still have a bunch in different classes there. We still haven't learned who Saber is, even though, again, I've heard the name, but I don't know who it is. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and we will see you guys next time for some more Let's Read Fate's Strange Fake as we move on with the next chapter. Watcher. Ciao.
Yo.